Good morning everyone. My name is Arshima Blal. Today we are going to discuss the topic menstrual cycle from the chapter Human Reproductive System. The reproductive cycle present in female primates, example monkeys, apes and humans, is called menstrual cycle. Its time duration is normally 28 to 29 days, which may vary in different females due to the hormonal imbalances in their body. The menstrual cycle starts at menarche, which occurs at puberty in girls at the age of 11 to 12 years. It ends at menopause, which is 50 years of age normally. Now, we are going to discuss the neuroendocrine mechanism involved in the menstrual cycle. See, in neuroendocrine mechanism, there are the main role of hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Hypothalamus produces the gonadotropin releasing hormone which acts on the pituitary gland, its anterior part, which leads to the production of follicle stimulating hormone. As we know that there are already millions of primary follicles are already present in the female from the fetal life itself. Now this FSH acts on the primary follicle and leads to its growth to secondary follicle, tertiary follicle and then mature Graafian follicle. This mature Graafian follicle, at some stage of female life, the pituitary gland also produces the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone. At the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, there is LS surge and FSH is at peak, which leads to the ovulation from the mature Graafian follicle by rupturing it. See, here is a secondary oocyte produced from the ruptured follicle, which go on to the fallopian tube for further fertilization. This ruptured follicle further changes into corpus luteum, which is a glandular body, which releases two types of hormone, estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen leads to the thickening of endometrium. As we see here, this is the secretory or luteal phase. This is named because of the presence of corpus luteum, which produces the two hormone, estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen again leads to the thickening of endometrium and progesterone maintain the thickening of endometrium and make it glandular. See, these are the glands present here. And blood vessels are formed here which make it highly vascular, which makes endometrium highly vascular, glandular in nature, and it also creates the thermogenic effect. Later on, as we know that luteinizing hormone in the female body remains high only up to 14 days. After that it starts to decline. It leads to the formation of corpus albicans, which is a white body which later disintegrates. Now here we will correlate the ovarian cycle and the endometrium cycle which occurs in the uterus. As we see here, we can see here that the one menstrual cycle has already been completed here. Now we start from here. When these follicles start growing, they produce estrogen in large amount, which leads to the proliferation such that the growth of the endometrium. Later on, after the formation of the corpus luteum, as we have said earlier, it also leads to the production of the hormone estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen again leads to the thickening of endometrium here. It is at highly thickened stage here, and the progesterone here maintains the thickening of endometrium. It makes it glandular and leads to the formation of large amount of blood vessels, which make it highly vascular. After that, we will see here, after some point of time, these hormones start declining in the female body, as there is ovulation already been taken place. So this endometrium cells starts regressing, and in menstrual phase there is a slow out of endometrium with blood by the effect of prostaglandin hormone, as we will see next. Now I am going to explain each and every phase thoroughly, step by step. First of all, there is menstrual phase. See, as we had seen earlier, at menstrual phase, the luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, estrogen and progesterone all had declined, which leads to the regression of endometrium. As here, the degeneration of endometrium takes place. Due to the decline in the luteinizing hormone. Here we can see that here is the degeneration of endometrium because of the degeneration of corpus luteum. Since we had seen earlier, see that corpus luteum is producing the two hormones estrogen, progesterone, and LH is also high there. But in menstrual phase there is degeneration of corpus luteum, which leads to the decrease in the amount of luteinizing hormone, which also further leads to the decline in the amount of estrogen and progesterone. Which leads to the breakdown of endometrium and corpus luteum. And here we can see one thing. At this point there is high amount of prostaglandin is present. Prostaglandin is present in female body. Which leads to the contraction in the uterus. Thus these are the period cramps which a female feels during her periods. This leads to the slow out of endometrium plus blood from the female body. By vagina. There is normally 50 to 150 ml blood gets lost in one menstrual cycle. Thus, we can see here in menstrual phase there is degeneration of corpus luteum. Since corpus luteum was responsible for the production of luteinizing hormone, here corpus luteum had get degenerated, which leads to the decline in the amount of hormone luteinizing hormone, which further leads to the decline of the hormone estrogen and progesterone. But one thing is there is high amount of prostaglandin is present, which leads to the contraction in uterus. Now we are going to discuss proliferative phase, which is also called follicular phase. See, since we had seen earlier, there is the growth of follicles had been taken place in the ovary. There are numerous follicles. Immature follicles are present in the female body. Due to the action of follicle stimulating hormone, they start growing. Due to the action of follicle stimulating hormone, these follicles start growing and maturing. In these follicles, there is one follicle which is dominant in nature because of its high growth rate and size. So, this is dominant follicle. Dominant follicle. Since this follicle is dominant, it starts producing two hormones, inhibin and estrogen. This inhibin acts on these immature follicles and prevents their growth. This inhibin acts on the immature follicles by inhibiting the action of FSH on it. The action of follicle stimulating hormone. Here the simple thing is that during proliferative phase of menstrual cycle, there are numerous immature follicles are present on which follicle stimulating hormone acts and leads to their growth. After some time, there is one follicle which is dominant in nature due to its big size, which starts producing two hormones, inhibin and estrogen. This inhibin acts on the follicle stimulating hormone and inhibiting its action on these immature follicles, which leads to the production of only one dominant follicle. Now the third one is luteal phase. This phase is also called secretory phase. Here, in luteal phase, there is the formation of corpus luteum. Sorry. Here, after the proliferative phase, there is the ovulatory phase. This ovulatory phase occurs at the end of the proliferative phase. Here, our Graafian follicle has matured enough and it's undergo ovulation and leads to the production of secondary oocyte. This happens because of LS surge. And FSH was at its peak during this time. Here what happens is that in the body there is hypothalamus and pituitary gland present. This hypothalamus produces the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which acts on the pituitary gland and leads to the production of luteinizing hormone from both the anterior and posterior pituitary and follicle stimulating hormone. Thus, at the 14th day of menstrual cycle, there is LS surge and FSH is at its peak, which leads to the rupturing of the mature Graafian follicle and leads to the release of secondary oocyte, which goes on to the fallopian tube for fertilization. Now, the last phase is luteal phase. This phase is called secretory phase. Here, corpus luteum has been formed as a result of corpus luteum has been formed as a result of secondary oocyte from the mature Graafian follicle. Now, this corpus luteum is a glandular body which produces the two hormones estrogen and progesterone. Here, this estrogen against leads to the thickening of endometrium. And the hormone progesterone is responsible for the maintenance of endometrium. Maintaining endometrium. This progesterone also makes endometrium highly vascular It is due to the formation of large number of blood vessels. Makes endometrium glandular. Due to the formation of glands. And one more role is there. It creates thermogenic effect in females. Thus, the female observes a little increase in the body temperature at the time of ovulation. Now, we will recap what we had studied till now. Today we had discussed the topic menstrual cycle. The reproductive cycle present in female primates, example monkeys, apes and humans, is called menstrual cycle. Its time duration is normally 28 to 29 days. It starts at menarche in females at the puberty at the age of 11 to 12 years and ends at menopause. Then we had discussed the neuroendocrine mechanism involved in the menstrual cycle, which involves mainly hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. There are two cycles which go simultaneously in the menstrual cycle. One is ovarian cycle and the second is the endometrium cycle, which occurs in the uterus. In the ovarian cycle, there is the growth of the follicles due to the effect of follicle stimulating hormone, which later on form the mature Graafian follicle, which undergoes ovulation due to the effect of LH, which causes the LH surge, and FSH is at its peak during ovulation. Here the secondary oocyte is formed, which move to the fallopian tube for further fertilization. Then here is the formation of corpus luteum, then corpus albicans, which was a white body which later disintegrates. Now there is endometrium cycle, which had taken place simultaneously with the ovarian cycle. As a large amount of estrogen has been produced by these growing follicles, there is a proliferation of endometrium which leads to the proliferative phase, and later on, after the ovulation, there is the production of corpus luteum, which is a glandular body which again produces the two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. This estrogen again leads to the thickening of the endometrium, and this progesterone maintains the endometrium and makes it glandular and highly vascular. Now we had discussed one by one all the phases. First was the menstrual phase, where the degeneration of corpus luteum had taken place, due to which the luteinizing hormone in the female body had reduced, which simultaneously reduced the estrogen and progesterone amount, and there is the high amount of prostaglandin has been produced in the female body, which leads to the contraction in the uterus, thus lead to the slow out of blood from the uterus by the vagina in female. Its normal amount is 50 to 150 ml. The second phase was proliferative phase, which is also called follicular phase, because here the development of follicles had taken place. Here we had seen that there is one dominant follicle which produces the two hormones, inhibin and estrogen. The role of inhibin is that inhibin acts on the FSH and prevents the further growth of other undeveloped follicles, and estrogen is responsible for the thickening of endometrium. Third phase was ovulatory phase. This ovulatory phase in the menstrual cycle occurs at the end of the proliferative phase. Here, the hypothalamus produces the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which acts on the pituitary gland. Here, the anterior pituitary gland produces the luteinizing hormone, and the posterior pituitary also produces the LH and FSH. Thus, at the ovulatory phase, there is LH surge and FSH is its peak, which leads to the release of secondary oocyte from the matured Graafian follicle. After the formation of secondary oocyte, it had moved to the fallopian tube for fertilization. Now, the fourth phase was luteal phase, which was also known as secretory phase. It is named luteal because of the production of corpus luteum, which is a glandular body which again produces the two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen again leads to the thickening of endometrium, and here the progesterone is responsible for maintaining endometrium, and it also makes endometrium glandular by formation of glands and formation of large amount of blood vessels, which make it highly vascular. And one more effect is there, it creates thermogenic effect in females. Thus, female experience a little increase in the temperature during the ovulation in their menstrual cycle.